Diah Lubis and the Father Resurrection. Diah Lubis was having a slow day at the Europa Moon. Princess Irulan was on a state visit overseas, so there were no difficult culinary challenges for her to face in the kitchen operations. Now would be a good time to take some annual leave, Diah reflected. She knew where she wanted to go. She wanted to visit her mother back on Earth and learn her mother's recipe for apam balik pancakes. While Diah was a better chef than her mother, there was still something magical with the food she had eaten while growing up. Diah walked to the office of the commanding officer of the base, Admiral Awang Engku. He gave her a sour look as she entered and spoke. "Diah Lubis, do you find it appropriate to enter my office without booking an appointment?" "I'm sorry, Admiral Engku. Now that Princess Irulan is away on a state visit, it would be appropriate for me to take annual leave and visit my mother on Earth," Diah replied. "Request denied. Annual leave applications need to be handed in at least 1 month in advance. Besides, this is a HR question. Don't bother me with these minor details," Awang replied. Diah looked at the strict admiral and she felt sad. There were 2 things she wanted in life: to cook for the princess and to meet her mother. If she took her annual leave in a month, someone else would cook for the princess in her absence. That could be the end of her tenure as the royal chef for the Malaysian Space Empire. Diah had an idea. If she described her trip to Earth as a working visit, she wouldn't need to apply a month in advance. Princess Irulan asked me to learn a new apam balik pancake recipe during her time away," Diah said. "This has got nothing to do with me. Learn it from watching videos on SpaceNet," Awang replied dismissively. "I learn better in person. A chef in Kuala Lumpur has the best apam balik recipe in the world," Diah explained. "This chef doesn't happen to be your mother?" Awang sniped. "That's irrelevant. Princess Irulan wants me to cook her the best meals in the world. I need the portable wormhole generator for my travels," Diah stated. Hearing this, Awang Engku had to resist his urge to pull his hair in frustration. It infuriated him that the sovereign seemed more interested in trying out different foods than she was in running for the empire. In any case, he would comply. Awang took out the portable wormhole generator from a safe, handed it to Diah and spoke. "Request granted. Please refrain from taking actions that change history this time." "Thank you, Admiral Engku. This means a lot for me," Diah said, and opened a portal to Earth and left the space station. Swoosh! As Diah woke up in her apartment in Kuala Lumpur, she realized why she didn't like going home. The apartment was muggy due to the surrounding tropical heat. It was also filthy since she hadn't cleaned it for a long time. I'll clean it after I have visited my mother," Diah thought. While cleanliness was important, she could not wait any longer to taste her mother's cooking. It was raining outside and Diah had to walk through the rain to get to her mother's house. While it was more convenient to teleport, the portable wormhole generator was a secret technology, so she shouldn't teleport unless it was necessary. Besides, it would be rude to surprise her mother without knocking on her door. The tropical rain had soaked Diah when she reached her mother's place. After knocking on the door for a long time, her mother, Indila Lubis, opened the door. Diah noticed that her mother had been crying. "Diah, what are you doing here?" Indila asked. "I came to visit you, Mom. I missed your cooking," Diah replied. "But how did you get here so fast? We had a video chat a few days ago, and you were still at the Europa Moon. It takes longer than that to travel from there," Indila objected. Her mother's question gave Diah a dilemma. She didn't want to lie to her mother, but she couldn't reveal the secret wormhole technology either. Diah smiled at her mother and replied, "I have been traveling for a few weeks, Mom. I used my apartment at the Europa Moon as a background picture for our conversations. I wanted to surprise you." "Oh, I wish you had told me, so I could have prepared a meal for you. Instead, You had to see me crying, Indila replied. That's okay, Mum, but please tell me, why are you crying? Has something happened? Diah asked. Your father died on this day 25 years ago, Indila replied. Diah reflected on her mother's statement. She had never known her father who had died in a war before she was born. However, growing up, she had never seen her mother cry on the 21st of June. Quite the opposite. The 21st of June had always been a day of joy and fun, which was her reason for going back in the first place. I don't understand. I have never seen you sad on the 21st of June before, Diah objected. That's because I didn't want to make you sad with my mourning. I put on a happy facade to make your childhood enjoyable. After you went to sleep, I cried many nights while missing your father, Indila replied. Seeing her mother cry, Diah got emotional and started mourning the father she never knew. Although she knew she shouldn't change the past, she could not let this one slide. Her mother had been suffering in silence for many years to keep her happy. It was time to repay the favor. Don't worry, I'll bring him back to you, Diah said. What do you mean, Diah? Indila replied. I'll make sure that my father, Besam Lubis, doesn't die on the 21st of June 2168, Diah stated, and opened a wormhole to travel back in time to stop her father from dying. Swoosh! Diah immediately recognized Lieutenant Besam Lubis as she approached him in an army camp on the border to Vietnam. If she did not change history, he would die in the offensive war against Vietnam the following day. Besam and a few soldiers approached Diah and he shouted at her. What are you doing here, civilian? This is a military base. Identify yourself. My name is Diah Lubis from the Malaysian Space Corps. This is my ID, Diah said, and handed Besam her Space Navy ID. Besam looked at Diah's ID, shook his head, and replied, This is not a valid ID, and you are not in our database. Please listen to me, Besam. If you fight in war tomorrow, you'll die. I am your daughter. I want you to live so Indila can be happy, Diah pleaded. Don't bring my wife into this, Besam said and turned to his soldiers. Men, take the intruder to the holding cells. We need to ascertain the identity of this impostor. After Besam said this, the soldiers grabbed Diah and took her away. Such an unfortunate first meeting with her dad. Diah was sitting in a holding cell when Besam approached her in the night. He looked sweaty as if he had woken up from a nightmare. He walked up to Diah and spoke. Who are you? You look like the spitting image of my pregnant wife, Indila. I told you already, I am Diah Lubis. Don't throw away your life for nothing. The war against Vietnam won't bring anything good, Diah said. Okay, I will fake illness so I won't have to fight tomorrow. Lieutenant Ramat Inda can take my place, Besam said. Great, best of luck, Dad. I'll see you on the other side, Diah said, opened a wormhole and left the army camp in the year 2168. Not again, Diah thought as she woke up in Surelia. She knew what would happen next. Finkerbelle the Mother Fairy would scold her for changing the trajectory of time. Diah Lubis, what have you done? Finkerbelle exclaimed as he approached Diah. I'm sorry, Finkerbelle. I never knew how much my mother missed my father. When I saw her cry, I knew I had to give her the good life she deserved, Diah replied. But you made everything much worse. When you saved your father from the war, he felt convinced that a guardian angel was watching over him. This made him careless, and subsequently both your father and your mother died in a car crash. Thus he grew up as an orphan. Hearing this, Diah started crying. She had tried to make her mother happy by saving her father, and instead she had doomed them both. When would she ever learn the dangers of time travel? Please forgive me. There must be something I can do to set things right, Diah pleaded. I'm not sure I wish to grant you that power. You have proven selfish and reckless, Finkerbelle replied. Please, Finkerbelle, I know I did the wrong thing, but I did it for love. Wouldn't you do anything to see your mother happy? Diah replied. Oh, Diah, I cannot stay angry at you. I'll give you one chance to convince your parents to be careful. If you can't save them, I cannot save you, Finkerbelle urged. Thank you, Finkerbelle, Diah chirped. Good luck, Finkerbelle replied, snapped her fingers, and sent Diah through time and space. Diah returned to Kuala Lumpur in 2172. It was the day that her parents would succumb to a traffic accident, but she would save them. She had to save them. She could not cause her mother's premature death. Diah saw her pregnant mother, her father, and herself as a 3-year-old rushing towards a car. How strange that I cannot recall any of this happening, Diah reflected and realized that it had never happened in the original timeline. By saving her father, she had also made sure that her mother became pregnant again. If she saved her parents, she would have a sibling in her present life. How exciting! Basam and Indila, today is not good for driving, Diah shouted at her parents. Indila gave her a sour look and replied, Who are you? Do you know this woman, Basam? Basam flushed and replied, She's my guardian angel. She appeared in one of my dreams and warned me of going to the war. I faked illness and everyone in my platoon died the next day, including my best friend, Ramit Indah. Hearing this, Diah started crying. Ramit Indah was the father of one of her best friends from school, Munna Indah. By saving her father, she had caused the death of her friend's father, or worse yet, caused her friend to never exist. Diah, why are you crying? Basam asked. How do you know her name? Indila groaned. Look, I'm your daughter from the future. I saved Dad from dying in the war because I didn't want you to suffer, Mum, Diah exclaimed. This woman is crazy. Get me to the maternity ward now, Indila shouted. I'll drive, Diah said. No, she's not. Tell her to go away, Basam, Indila exclaimed. Basam shook his head and replied, No, we will listen to Diah. I'm sure that she is here to protect us. Just drive me now, Indila groaned. Diah got into the driver's seat of the car and she drove her family to the hospital. Once she was there, she was babysitting her younger self while waiting for her younger sister to be born. Once her mission in 2172 was complete, she used the wormhole generator to go back to her own time. Waking up in Cerealia, Diah knew that she had messed up again. Time travel and changing the past was a complicated business, and no matter what she did, she struggled to get everything right. Dear Lubis, meeting a younger version of yourself have caused irreversible changes to the timeline, Finkerbelle said. Oh no, what can we do about it? Diah exclaimed. Nothing, but on the bright side, things didn't get worse. They just got different. Different in what way? Diah said. You'll find out once you reach your destination. Make sure to not make any rushed decisions. Your new timeline will seem very strange at first, but everything will be okay. Now go and make an old lady proud, Finkerbelle said. Who are you? Diah asked. You already know, Finkerbelle replied, snapped her fingers, and sent Diah to the Europa moon base in the year 2193. Swoosh. As Diah came to her senses, she found herself confused and disoriented in the kitchen. She intended to make golden duck for Princess Irulan, but something was wrong. She had forgotten the recipe, and it felt like she had never done it before. Chief Scientist Diah Lubis, What are you doing in the kitchen? Diah stared in awe as Admiral Nick Telugu approached her, smiled, and kissed her. Yuck! Why is that traitor kissing me? Diah thought, but she remembered what Finkerbelle had said. Could she and Nick be a couple in this timeline, and what would she do about it? I'm trying to cook golden duck. It is my favorite dish, but I have forgotten the recipe for it, Diah replied. Oh, I didn't know you liked cooking. I learn something new about you every day. Nick chuckled. I am a multifaceted woman, Diah replied. In any case, leave the cooking to the servants. We need to hurry up, get changed, and head to the dining hall. There is a royal reception today, and we don't want to be late. Diah followed Nick to his fancy apartment, which had a walk-in closet full of fancy ballroom gowns for her. As Diah got dressed in a green silk dress and a diamond necklace, she smiled in anticipation. Her time travel adventures had created a completely different life for her, and she couldn't wait to see where this adventure would evolve. To be continued.